1966, my last time in jail. At Bathurst, about 20 of us heard that we were going to Kirkconnell Prison Farm. And I thought, oh shit, it might be like that 1930s movie. I was a fugitive from a chain gang. But my nervousness vanished immediately because everybody was real happy to be going to Kirkconnell. A bloke said, "It's great. Your cell's like a motel room and it's one out. And there's grouse tucker in a nice dining room. You can buy stuff, coffee and Milo and chocolate with the money you earn." I said, "How much do we get?" He said, 50 cents a day. Save for you until you get out. But at Kirkconnell, you can spend it if you want. It ain't much, but it's better than nothing. And I calculated the dough I'd leave jail with if I didn't succumb to consumerism was $75 in nowadays dough. Someone joked, "Hey, Beatnik, you'll be rich with your 5 months' pay. That's why used vagrants come to jail for, ain't it? To save up dough." That night, we had to stay in X Division at Bathurst. I think it was called X Division. It was outside the walls of Bathurst back then, and it was real nice, a nice sort of room, but our cells were left open until 9 p.m. And there was a TV in the rec room that you could watch until about 11 p.m, until about 9 p.m. And then, usually I went to bed and slept real good to make time pass quicker until I got out. But around 7 o'clock, a pudgy bloke about 30 years old came to my door and he said, "You ready for me to fuck you?" So I said, "Oh, fuck," I thought to myself, here we go again. So I said, "You try and fuck me, you'll lose your fucking teeth." So I made like Rocky Marciano, and my mind was screaming out, "What are you doing? He'll kill you." But I bounced around saying, "Come on, have a go." And I expected Pudgy's fist to explode on my head. And I'd been practicing blocking techniques from a book I had, and I thought maybe I could block him and then piss off downstairs. But he went to punch me, and I got ready to block, and his punch was about to come, and he pulled it up. He didn't punch me. And he said, "We was just checking to see if you got any heart. It's okay, mate. But I'd have killed you, mate. See this fist? It's the biggest fist you've ever seen, ain't it?" I said, "Oh, yeah, it's the biggest fist I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to be hit with that." And then he pissed off. And next morning, I came out and I thought people treated me a lot better. But it may have been my imagination at having at least acted brave. From then on, I felt at ease. When we got to Kirkconnell, each morning we'd hop in the back of an old Bedford truck and, wrapped in warm clothes against the wind and the snow, bump along rutted tracks to the government pine forest, except there wasn't any snow because it was summer. Yeah, I forgot that. But in winter, there was a lot of snow at Kirkconnell, I think, I was told. And in a log hut in the middle of the pine forest, we planted pine trees, and on tea breaks we ate unlimited toasted cheese on hot rolls that were given to us. And sitting next to a cast iron stove fire, we rolled tobacco and boasted of crimes committed and women loved. And we sipped hot sweet tea and luxuriated in the warmth. And if it rained, we'd yell, "Send her down, Huey." Every place I went when it rained and you were working and you didn't want to work, people would yell out, "Send her down, Huey." Now, I don't know who Huey was. That must have been the name of God back then for sending the rain down. And in this hut, I'd lose myself in a novel until at 4 o'clock a truck took us sliding through the Kirkconnell mud to our motel. And just when I'd learnt to enjoy Kirkconnell, it was time to leave. So, dressed freshly in me freshly laundered blue jeans and me black sport coat, I was driven to Bathurst to await the 7 a.m. train to Sydney. The railway waiting room at Bathurst had a fireplace and a wood panels, and it was just like the posh men's room in Sydney's State Theatre. By the fire, in a fatherly armchair, I counted my $70 nowadays release money and, feeling rich, crossed the road to a milk bar to enjoy my first milkshake in 5 months. Once again, the sunshine and life was perfect. Okay, that's the last of my stories. I never went back to jail. And jail back then was always called boob, B-O-O-B. That's what we'd say. We're in the boob. And have a jerry, we'd often say have a jerry. That means have a look. And the worst insult was to be a dog, of course, or a give up. But the third worst thing to be called was a gig, G-I-G-G. A gig was someone who gawked at things instead of acting cool. What else can I tell you before I finish? Oh, we didn't split matches into 8. Some guys said they could split matches into 8, wooden matches, but the most I ever saw was splitting them into 4. And there was no radio box in Bathurst or Yatala, only in the Bay and Adelaide jail. What else? There was no internet in the 60s, so no one knew much about you except the screws. What else? No, that's about all. All right, that's the end of my story. Okay, after I got out of Kirkconnell prison farm in early 67, I headed straight for the Royal George. Now, I was now almost 23 years old, and I'd mastered the art of looking cool. So it was time to concentrate on my only other ambition, getting a cool girlfriend. So I got a job on the waterboard for a couple of weeks and then rented a room at 253 Forbes Street. Sometimes I was able to pick up a girl. Well, once I picked up a girl at the Royal George Hotel, but when we got to Hyde Park, we lay on the grass and kissed for about an hour, and she said she'd meet me the next day, but she didn't meet me the next day, so I mustn't have been a very good kisser. But, you know, it depends on your taste. So anyway, yeah, that's a whole other story about that girl. But I'm not going to brag about girls because I didn't have that many girls. Where was I? In the Piccolo bar one night, no, it was daytime, a girl came in and she looked a tiny bit like Sandra Dee. And she said, "Are you Kaz?" I says, "Yeah." Ozzy told me that you know John Sande. He's living with my friend Bronwyn, but I've lost the letter that had their address on it. Her voice was like jelly meat to my inner cat, and my heart purred as I calculated she needs me to take her to her pal. All I've got to do is keep the other predatory bums away from her. Using my side vision, I noticed that Tony Kelly, the mad monk of Paddington and well-known womaniser, was about to make his way over. He'd introduced himself like a shark to fresh blood, and behind the counter, a Casanova imitator called Don Gibson was combing his long, dark hair, plotting how to get her to come home with him. He looked like a mix of John Barrymore and Lord Byron, and he wore a black cape, so I had to work fast. I dragged her outside and I said, "Oh, we might catch John and Bronwyn at a party." So I put on what I considered was an attractive facial expression, and I herded her divine humanity towards Cleveland Street. She was from Melbourne, she told me, and had never been to Sydney before. Oh, she might have come from Tasmania, but she was in Melbourne before she came to Sydney. And she'd never been in Sydney before. And she was overjoyed about seeing her girlfriend who'd left home when she was 16 and gone searching for a life. My sister's still at home trying to calm Mum and Dad. Parents don't get it, do they? "Do you know this Sande well?" she asked me, and I said, "Sande is one of the first friends I ever made who understood beatitude, and we occasionally swapped semi-deep thoughts." John Sande was greatly respected by the Sydney push. He was perpetually in shorts and no shoes, and he always had a copy of fantasy and science fiction magazine in his back pocket. He had semi-long, silky black hair, a compact, perfect body, and a knowing smile. And I told her, "Oh, Sandy's a cool cat. Yeah, he has the gift of encouraging me to be honest for a change. You'll like him." And I thought to myself, I hope she don't like him too much. Sande had a great basement pad at the corner of Liverpool and Woomera Avenue. It was near the Dry Red furniture shop that was run by hippies, and a good place to buy weed. And he had a fabulous record collection. And we both sold a King's Cross Whisper, which was, the King's Cross Censor, which was a newspaper with all jokes and pin-ups in it. And it was sold only at King's Cross. And you had to go to the office in King's Cross and give them some money, and they would give you some copies, and you sold them. But when you brought the money back, you'd made a profit. So we used to yell, "Get your filthy banned hippie newspaper here!" And Sande was a genuine beatnik and very handsome. And I thought, fuck, the lucky bugger. He could score any chick. I hope Glenn don't fall for him. Now, John had a girlfriend called Bronwyn, but in case they'd broken up in the last hour, I projected a prayer up to heaven. "Dear God, please let this girl fall for me and live happily ever after with me, and nobody else but me. Amen." Now, I was a Buddhist, but I used any means available. Why not? It was free. At Cleveland Street near Redfern, the party was in full swing, even though it was 5 o'clock in the evening. Charlie Mingus jazz blasted out of the house windows, and there was a fight occurring on the front step. The bop jazz made it a ballet of Biff, and two old well-known hippies, Ted Volomere and English Paul Stevens, were pushing a red-bearded guy that looked like a gnome down the steps. Ted dressed like a pirate from days of yore and was as short as the bloke he was pounding, so no one objected to the fight. I protected Glenn from poorly aimed punches like a real butch guy, and we made it onto the veranda to the veranda of the house in Cleveland Street. And Big Malto, he was a big, strong hippie with big muscles and a big black beard. He said, "That little bastard down there tried to pinch Trevor Trueheart's radio." Because back then, radios were all plug-in. There was no... TVs were rare in 67, especially in hippie houses. So a radio was a prized possession. And he had it stuffed up his jumper, said Malto. And it fell out when he waved goodbye. And everybody was laughing at the idea of stealing from a hippie party. It was just not done. Down on the footpath, a tall, elegant redhead with a posh accent was tending to the wounds of the gnome. And someone told me that he was a philosophy professor at Sydney University. Suicide Jenny went down and helped posh accent dame clean blood from the professor's face. Jenny yelled, "You call yourself hippies, but you're just hoodlums." And Jenny looked like the wife in the Addams Family TV show. And she was the girlfriend of my pal Phil Bryden-Brown, of which you have heard before. A hyphenated beatnik with a crew cut. Both were alcoholics. Phil looked like Patrick Swayze mixed with Lee Marvin, and when pissed was quite ornery. English Paul and Pirate Ted returned upstairs, and hearing Jenny's denunciation, Ted said, "We is hoodlums, Paul. We ain't got no class." "Yeah," and Paul said, "I ain't no bum without no class." And then with an Irish accent he said, "I'll fight anyone in the house." Laughter exploded, and people were very drunk. And there was class consciousness developing in our group. Pot smokers thought that grass was better than booze, and the two groups were starting to congregate in different rooms lately, because pot was pretty new in 67, and it wasn't as popular as it is today in Australia, in Sydney. The party roared on until Glenn felt like adjourning to my single-bed pad. As usual, I had no money for taxi fare, so we walked through the warm spring evening to Forbes Street, and I was high as a kite to be close to this warm, sweet-scented, live female human. We lay kissing gently in the dark. Never had I felt such gratitude for having a room and a single bed. I was going in the book. I boast about my penis, how beautifully circumcised it is, but I'm not going to do that here. All right. So, and I've been dying to show it off to someone for years, and we made it real good, because I'd often practiced alone for this very situation, and. Then she bucked and she came in an orgasmic explosive. Well, at least she looked like she was coming in an explosive way. I certainly did eventually. And Glenn kissed me, and we laughed afterwards, and then we cuddled up, and I was so happy. Through that long, enchanted night, I stayed awake listening to her breathe. Her skin caressed my senses, and the awareness of her gave me such joy that I telepathed to God and Buddha. I said, "Oh, thank you, thank you." I woke up early in the morning and I feasted on her wonderful profile. For 3 days we stayed in bed, getting up only to go to the toilet and snatch food from the kitchen. This was what life was about. What the world was searched for why guys went to work and why squares needed money. But cool cat me had it without working. This was what hippie life was all about, I told myself. Then I slowed down my self-love and I gave humble thanks to Glenn. That week we picnicked in the Botanical Gardens and held court at the Royal George Hotel, but mostly we stayed in bed. Glenn's money ran out and my rent was due, but having a young lady in my room led the landlord to extend leniency. The old fella, to get a look at Glenn, delivered us a daily tray of food and watched as we ate it. Well, he watched Glenn as she ate hers. I never saw him watching me much, but he was fascinated that this beautiful teenage girl was in a room that he could sit there and watch her eat. Oh, fuck. Well, that's all for now. I was so happy to have a girlfriend. That's the only reason I wanted to be a beatnik. Because I figured it would be much easier to get a girlfriend as a beatnik than as a normal guy. Yeah, so that's that. All right, that's all for now.